So
She's got it down the type of calls we're looking here. This is the calls that's being had.
Welcome. I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee of Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 at 5:30 PM. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Pass. Meeting is now open to public comment. Is there somebody that would like to approach the podium and make public comment this evening? I don't believe we have anybody in queue. No public comment. Okay, we will move past public comment to departmental updates. And I think we're going to wait for our town manager to join us before we get into public safety. So Charlie, if you're there for public safety, we will wait to put you on. Having said that, fire is up. Chief Gary.
Okay.
Up as well, so.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just got a couple of our monthly stats, and then I have some year-end stats. So December, we had 70 calls, and I'll review the year-end stuff. Training hours were 251, 0 injuries reported. The manpower, we added 1 new member. And under leave of absences, I do want to point out one thing where it says 2 medical leave of absences. Those members are on light duty, so they are assisting with administrative duties and really helping out that way. So with that said, we did onboard 1 new member at Station 3. That member came to us from Newington Fire Department after years, so he came fully trained and certified, so we were able just to fold him right in. And we did, as part of our safety program, we had gear fitting for 5 new members. Last year, the gear was out almost 9-10 months. Now it's down to 4 months lead time, which is a lot better. And like I was mentioning, what I'd like to do tonight is just give some end of the calendar year stats for 2022. For the year, we responded to 657 calls for service. And under the National Fire Incident Program, these are broken down into 9 sections to include fires, which were 11.25% of our runs, and they were 13 structure fires, 6 in town, and 7 mutual aid requests, 21 cooking-related fires, 7 vehicle fires, and lastly, 11 brush and grass fires. The second category is overpressure, rupture, explosion, or overheat with no fire. We had 1 incident for 0.15. Rescues of all types, that we did 20% of our calls, and 56 motor vehicle injuries with injuries, 49 without, and 8 elevator rescues. Okay, next, category 4 is hazardous conditions with no fire, 11.25%, and those are natural gas leaks. We had 17. Add in another 10 motor vehicle accidents, general cleanups, overheated motors, power line down, etc. were another 13 calls. Our next category is service calls for a little over 15%. Smoke investigations, lockouts, assist PD, our drone calls are in this category. And mutual aid calls where we're covering the stations or just providing coverage where we're not actually at the scene of the incident. Number 6 is good intent for 13.5%. Dispatch canceled en route. Some hazardous material calls. Odor of smoke with no smoke visible is in there. False alarms is next at 27%. alarm system unintentional activations, malicious false alarms are in there, and some cooking smoke calls where the cooking smoke unintentionally sets off a smoke detector for the building. The next category is severe weather. We had no calls there. Category 9 is special incidents, which citizen complaints, et cetera, for 1.5% of calls. Few other facts. Our average length of time on a call was 1 hour and 15 minutes, and our average attended was 15 members a call. And our total number attended was 9,750, which I mean by that is the members left their homes 9,750 times to answer alarms. That's quite a bit. A couple other annual highlights. Our busiest month of the year was December, with almost double the amount of calls for the slowest month, which was April. Our busiest day of the week is Wednesday, followed by Friday, and the quietest is Sunday. We actually had a discussion with a group outside the department last week, and we met the national response time guidelines 90% of the time. The other 10% of the time can be chalked up to either long-distance responses from mutual aid, limited access highway events, which takes more time to get there because there's only 1 or 2 access spots. And a lot of times, our command staff will intentionally slow apparatus down because the needs of the incident warrant a cold response. So we intentionally slow ourselves down. Lastly, our drone program is going great. And that's the training, and the program itself is a joint effort with the police department. I was talking to the drone team over the weekend, and we'd like to request your permission to have them bring a PowerPoint about their capabilities to the next public safety meeting, if it's all right.
That'd be great.
Okay. Our public information people have been very busy. And a couple of their highlights was in December, we had to postpone the Stuffer truck for a day. So they got out there and really hit it heavy with postponing, and then the next day reissuing the start times. We had the Board of Ed on December 16th, the Ron Orsini Award presentation. And we'd also like to thank the town for for presenting us with the awards on the Auger incident. There's quite a few more public information events, but that's in the monthly report. And real quickly, the limited access highway reimbursement program is going well, and as of today, we've billed $51,000 to the state. We're at about the 50-yard line with the to purchase the 2 designated transmitters. So again, the rest of the accomplishments are in the monthly report, and I stand by for any questions.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
Sure. Thanks for the report, Chief. So now that you have the end-of-year data, any trends or anything like that you can report to us year over year, or anything that's new or spiking up that maybe lends us out to education or prevention initiatives that we can be looking at?
I looked for those trends today, and you can, the reason why I mentioned the percentages, you can see they were pretty well spread out. The one trend we continue to see is the I-91 calls. I think we're up there 92 times last calendar year, almost twice a week. So that's the big thing.
That's more than past years? Has that popped up?
We are averaging I have the percentages, Bill, and not the actual numbers, but we're still averaging about 18% of the calls a year up on the highway. It's just a considerable amount. As for the trending and doing something with the trending, what we do try to do, especially on the false alarms, is to educate on how to prevent reoccurrence, especially when you're dealing with large apartment buildings and so forth, because it's inconvenient to everybody in there, not just the one person who caused the false alarms. We try to educate and work to prevent reoccurrence on that, but nothing really crazy trend-wise.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Prakash?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, the highway thing, right? So it's almost like 20% close to that, like our highway incidents, right, you're reporting to. So I was just wondering, like, if you want to break down the data, Chief, by, like, days of the week and, like, are there, like, hard times there? Like, I mean, it might help you. This is more like a comment than a question, really. It might help you a little bit more, like, in terms of staffing and other related, logistical issues, I guess. If you don't already do that, I was just wondering that because it almost seems like it's just it's constant, right? I mean, talking about trends, that's like a big trend and it's a constant.
Pankaj, it's interesting you asked that because earlier today I figured you were going to ask something like that, and I tried to do the breakdown of just the highway calls by day of the week, and it wouldn't allow me to do that. I can do that by hand and get it to you guys. Give me a week or so. But the way the program is, we're not just able to pull out that one type of call.
I see. Yeah, because that might be very helpful to you, like, not even like, putting aside, like, sharing it with us. I was just thinking, like, it might be operationally valuable data to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that was one thought I had. And the other one was, is there, like, any ceiling on how much reimbursement we can get from the state, or we are good with that?
No ceiling.
Okay.
And we did ask that. We had that conversation as we were talking about response times and a bunch of other stuff the other night. We were talking about reimbursement, and the way the Connecticut fire chiefs told me was, if the amount of requests for reimbursement outrun the amount in the fund, that the state does plan on adding additional to that fund. So that's where we're at with that. I don't,
Yeah, that's good.
let's just keep it coming to us.
Yeah, it's like 50K, close to
51K.
51K.
As of Friday night's call on the highway.
Excellent. Thank you.
Chief, thanks for the report. Yeah, the drone presentation next, public safety?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, well, let's do that. And recruitment, just a quick question on recruitment. I mean, just generally going well, retaining recruitment efforts?
I
I mean,
attended.
we're at 64, 60 active.
Yeah, and that's a good number. We're handling the calls. You can see we have 15 going to each call. That's 3 full crews. We obviously want more. I attended a recruitment meeting the other day. We will be starting, hopefully this week, if not next week, with welcome packages to all the new home buyers in town. That's going to be a start. There's a couple other things going on with the staff getting out there. We are planning a open house demo day in April, and we're going to do it up at Station 2 where we have that big training grounds, and we're able to light up a couple of the fire props and so forth. So we're looking to do it that day, and you guys have all been up there while we've been working, so we can put on some interesting shows there and create some evolutions up there. So that's the plan. So that's where we're going with that. I do want to say we have 2 new members in the pipeline, and one's a returning member with 20 years service, so he'll just go straight into the mix and start working.
And COVID or just generally the flu, not getting any, I mean, I think your report is saying 2 for the month of December? No? 3? Fire department experienced 3 COVID cases in the month of December. Either case originated at the firehouse. All cases were contained. So you're not, it's not affecting
Right, we had 3.
availability of
Right,
fire.
it didn't affect our way to respond, or our ability to respond. None of the cases occurred in the firehouse, nor was there any transmission in the firehouse. So these were one and dones. We followed the rules. When they came back, they went right back to work.
Great. Cool.
And I don't believe we have anybody out right now.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Going to jump over to ambulance. I think Kim Rickey is standing in for Chief Goodrich.
Yep, yes, I am. We have our December 2022 report. We had a total of 405 calls for, of course, it says November, it should say December. There were actually 2 opioid-related transports and 1 cardiac arrest for the month of December. And in the packet, you do have the year totals. Opioid, we actually had 2 in December and 22 for the year. Cardiac arrest, we had 1 in December and 12 for the year. We had 78 hours of training for the month of December. Both meetings dealt with trauma and medical assessment training. For the month of December, we assisted with Stuff a Truck, we assisted PD and fire at Westside and Walmart, which was a fun event. For the month of December, we have 2 new members. They are associate members. They actually come, one of the members is a certified EMT already. We do have some that are in the pipeline with our EMT class. We have an EMT class beginning at the end of February this year. And we have brochures over at the high school, and we talked to Darlene Listro over at the high school and the guidance office about that as well. We have 39 active writing members, 9 non-writing members, associate members, probationary members that are either gone through onboard training or are doing ride-alongs with us now, 8 members, 3 on medical leave, and 4 on college leave. You do have several reports in your packet with respect to response times, calls broken down between RHVAA and Aetna. Keep in mind, RHVAA during the week is on 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and on weekends, 24 hours a day, from 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 a.m. on Monday, whereas Aetna is 24/7. There are a few things I do want to point out. I think the last time I was at the table back earlier this past year, I'm a big trend person. And I think that's really important, especially when you do have an opportunity for education. We're seeing a lot more cases of people are mentioning COVID. The flu is big. Influenza A, having been a victim of that myself not too long ago. We're seeing a lot more breathing difficulty calls. So we're seeing influenza vaccine cover certain types of flu, but not all types of flu. So we're seeing a lot more people coming in with breathing problems, and it's influenza A, which is not covered by the vaccine. When they create vaccines, obviously they're trying to cover what they believe will be the strains being presented that year, that flu season, but they don't cover everything. So influenza A was big this year. So we're seeing an uptick in respiratory calls. We're also seeing an uptick in falls, but once again, I think when last I was here, we talked about the aging population. The aging population that's nationwide, not just in Rocky Hill. We do, however, have an inordinate number of assisted living facilities in town, age-restricted developments in town, and that may be an opportunity for education, maybe programs at the senior center, working with Gina Marino at the senior center for simple things we can do, moving throw rugs out of the way of the door, that type of thing, or wearing slippers with rubber soles and not just sucks as you walk around your home on hardwood floors. So I think that's an education opportunity that maybe I'll reach out to Gina and talk to her about that. Another thing is CPR. I know I've been getting calls and people talking to me about CPR, and I think it's unfortunate that, Damar Hamlin, or whatever his name is, the football guy, had cardiac arrest on the field, but that sparked some interest in, okay, how do we do CPR? Let's get some classes going. So we're getting a lot more calls on that. Another thing I want to point out is that we've been asked, Rocky Hill Volunteer Ambulance has been asked to be one of the first in the state of Connecticut to partake in what's called NEMSIS, which is the National Emergency Medical Services Information System 3.5 version. It's a data collection system that we participate in, as do all emergency medical services participate in, to get, so there, on a national level, you get better data, better quality data for trends, and to service patient care, provide better patient care, getting more detailed data. So we've been asked to participate in an upgraded version and be one of the first in the state to do so. So I have information on that if you'd like that. We also have our IT person, Eric Brescia, in the room that can maybe give you some clarity on that if you'd like that as well. Trying to see what else we have here. We have a chart that was prepared by year as far as runs by month and runs by year from 2019 to 2022. And you'll see in 2020 and 2021, those calls were an uptick because of COVID. So you see that trend as well. I don't know if you have any questions or
Counselor
any
O'Sullivan?
more information, any information in the future that we could provide to you that would give more clarity or other things that you may want, which as I said, we're evolving, so.
Counselor O'Sullivan?
Yeah, no questions here. Thanks for the data, Kim. I appreciate the year-over-year information, and nothing's jumping out as kind of an outlier, or same question I had for Chief Gary, in terms of new trends or anything unusual that we can respond to proactively.
Well, I
Nothing's really jumping out?
think the falls and the aging population, I really do, and I see it personally because, of my family situation, what have you. So I do think there is an opportunity for education in a very benign way. I think that can be done because we're seeing a lot of slip and falls and lift assists. So I do think there's a way that we could maybe provide some education to, even if it's to staff of facilities. But I do think it would help.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Prakash?
Yeah, so actually, it's good that you mentioned that chart, right, calls for service, because I was looking at it, and there's a lot of data here again, which is good, but I just want to clarify a couple of things. There is this number of like 117 in September, runs by month, 2022. This time, 117. Last time's chart, it was 119. It's two incidents, but it shouldn't be different, right? I mean,
It should not be different, no.
yeah. So for November, it's off by 1, which is 119 to 120. Last month, it was 119 on this chart. So there's some discrepancy there. So just to make
Okay.
sure, like, when your guys are running your data set, like, I don't know what the process is, but might not be consistent for whatever reason. Maybe you are, like, filtering out something. It could be a processing issue. I mean, just throwing out possibilities.
Some calls that are lacking data, and to have it not skew, those calls are dropped at some point. So this stuff comes in as raw data. It has to be manually manipulated into a chart and everything else. So depending on how it's selected or what's there, it will affect by 1 or 2, and depending on what the information is, if there's no data, you can't really say it's one thing or the other, so.
No, I'm just thinking about the total number of call volume, right? I mean, that should.
Right, so there's
yeah.
some calls that have no data with it. It logs as a call, but there's no information about the call. It's just there. So in the process, sometimes they'll get scraped out because it's meaningless
Could,
without anything to back it, so that you will see a little fluctuation depending on how the data is converted from numbers to charts.
Eric, could the number differential be, having ridden on the ambulance several times, could that be where you start a form and then something happens and then you go back and start a form again so that it creates a blank, you know?
It could be. The problem is how the information has to be, as I said, manually extracted out of there. So depending on your criteria you put in there, it may or may not catch some of it, or it may catch too much information. And having time to look at it, you may pop out a couple of calls that have no, there's no information to it. So you see that a lot with the response times, that the crew won't put in if it was a hot response, cold response. It'll just be left blank. So it skews the overall time because you don't know where it goes. So I may manually pop something out because of that and try to get a better picture of what the actual calls are.
Sure.
Well-
I was just thinking about the 21 data because the 21 is like almost a year older. So I can understand the 22 moving around a little bit. The 21, as reported this time, is 1403. Last time on this chart, it was 1402. So maybe there's, again, like for the last year in the time series, I think it should stay constant. It's a year-old data. That's all I'm saying. Like, I mean, maybe a processing issue there somewhere as well, but I can understand like revising something for the last few months.
Yeah, so,
Some of them,
but we'll
too,
check.
the classification of the calls, they'll change over time. I went from like a couple dozen classifications, and to try to clean it up and make it easier on the crews, narrow those numbers down. So you may lose a little bit from the prior year to the next year because they're not being classified the same anymore. So instead of having 8 different reasons of why a call was canceled, it may have been shrunk down to 4 reasons to make it more coherent and, meaningful.
All right.
We'll
But,
check that.
you know what we can do is after the meeting, probably offline, I have some other things here which I would like to
Okay.
bring to you just as a feedback. And we can probably consolidate some of these charts because between last month and this month, we had a few charts, which is great, but they're all like a little different. They're providing the same information, but they look different. One is a bar chart, one is more like a pie chart and things like that. And some of it is, I see why you did that, but some of them can be consolidated, I guess. And that's what I was thinking. So some of the stuff which the PD does, right? I also kept that on the record, like kind of, I printed it out here so that it's easier for you to look at as well. So I'm just trying to help. If that makes sense, I can, after the meeting, I can share it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Just keep in mind, this has to all be manually done. So
I get it.
varies month to month how much downtime they may have, so you may get a little more fancy chart as opposed to a more numerical. So
Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm trying to make it easier for you because right now you're producing a lot of charts. What I'm trying to do is actually consolidate it into like instead of 8, like 4 charts, so that actually you will have more time, hopefully, with what I'm proposing. So I'm totally aware that
Okay.
yeah.
tell me what you want and I'll try to work.
Yeah, no, I just looked at it and I was like, maybe I can, provide some feedback, which is actually going to reduce the amount of work, hopefully.
And the only comment I have, or to add to that, is I'm just looking at your lead page, and, I have a couple. One question is, influenza A, COVID-19, you talked about breathing problems. Is that asthma related? Is asthma in the
actually-
category?
It can be, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, you're also seeing with COVID, or what they call long COVID, you do see a lot of exacerbation of asthma with what's called long COVID. And with the influenza A, actually that lingering cough is borderline asthmatic.
And who is initiating the National Emergency Medical System information training or involvement? Is that the state or federal?
That's
You're the
through
first in the state to do
through
it.
the state.
It's the state is contacting you to do that?
Correct.
And then, so,
Which is-
and on the,
it's going to, just so you know, it's going to roll out for in Q1 and Q2 of this year for this area.
and Q2. And that is going to be playing into these reports and capturing of information?
Correct. It's kind of like data standardization.
Standardization, yeah, I think that's,
Yeah.
maybe, that's certainly what I'm looking for, is a little more standardization
Yeah.
of what we're getting, so that as we see it from month to month, we begin to understand a little,
Yep.
more about what's going into the number. And then, the report says December 22 report, and it says 405 calls for the month of November,
Yes.
but we're doing the January, which,
No, we're doing the December.
No, we are doing the December.
We're doing December. It does say November. I did not write this.
Okay,
I'm-
okay.
I'm sitting at the table. I'm the mouthpiece.
okay, it's, all right. I just want to make sure we're doing current month's numbers, because we shouldn't be that, we don't need that kind of lag time for it.
Can I, no, if you're finished, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, right. One thing I wanted to point out was, and this is just like my instinct, nothing else, the 2019 number and the 2022 number, I just noticed it actually. Both are 1349, 1349. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a big coincidence, right? And I generally don't believe in coincidences, but that's okay, just to check, like going back.
I checked that twice. That was-
You did? It was exactly the same number? Okay. All right, no problem. Thank you.
Good. I think we're all set there. We're going to, thank you very much.
Okay.
And now we move on to the police report.
Okay. Monthly activity for the month of December, there were 2,749 calls for service in the dispatch center. We had 61 criminal arrests for the month. 42 motor vehicle accidents were investigated, 4 involving injury. The remaining 38 were not, property crime only. I'm sorry, property damage only. There were 12 DUI arrests for the month. 92 infractions were issued, and an additional 140 warnings were issued for a total of 232 motor vehicle stops for the month. And our training hours were 270. Because it is the end of the calendar year, and on your monthly activity report, you can see the 2 columns, the year-to-date 2022 compared to the totals of 2021 alongside it, and just a couple comments as we look at those numbers. Our calls for service for 2022 in the dispatch center were up by 1,190 calls. That's roughly 100 calls per month increase from last year. And again, remember, those entail police, fire, and EMS. To give you some perspective, I crunched the numbers. 89.7%, or 38,727 of those calls were police. So almost 90% of those calls are police-related. EMS generated an additional 8.7%, 3,700 plus calls, and fire came in at 1.7% at 665 calls. Our numbers might be slightly off, fire and EMS, from our tracking, because I know you guys may track a little different, but they're pretty close. So it just gives you some perspective where the bulk of the calls are being generated. You look at the totals, criminal arrests. Criminal arrests in 2022 are up by 147 arrests. Motor vehicle accidents were up by 29. DUI arrests were up by 52 from 2021. Infractions up by 668. warnings up by 1,241. Significant numbers. You're going to ask me why. Combination of COVID receding and the additional staffing. There's the proof of the pudding right there. You're seeing the result. And training hours increased tremendously by 1,400 hours for the year. And if you go down a little further, the UCR, those are the Uniform Crime Reports, the crimes that we report to the FBI. For the year, sexual assaults were down by 7. Robberies were down by 7. Assaults were down by 9. Burglaries were up slightly, 12. There was a period, June, July, and August of 2022, that we saw a higher number than usual, and that kind of skewed the totals for the year. Larcenies were up by 7, and motor vehicle thefts were down by 5. So a lot of positive trending there, in my opinion,
Right.
and it's certainly an increase in activity. So I just want to say kudos to the officers, 38,000 plus citizen contacts, generating less than a handful of complaints, all of which were found not sustained, I think says a lot about the level of professionalism of the police department, and I just want to point that out and send my kudos to them. In terms of the area staffing, the department is fully staffed with the exception of dispatch. We have 2 openings, which I've been reporting on. Conditional offers were made to 2 candidates. We're in the middle of those backgrounds. They're going well. I anticipate bringing one of the dispatchers online in, February, and the other one will come online in March, and that'll put us at 100%. We do have 2 officers on light duty and 1 lieutenant on light duty, hopefully returning back to work by next month or so. Community service. For the month of December, on the 3rd, RHPD participated in the annual Stuff a Truck. It's Stuff a Fire Truck, Fill a Cruiser. We do that every year. Purpose of the event is to collect toys, food, and monetary donations to support the Rocky Hill Human Services. December 8th and 9th, the West Hill School PTO sponsored a Cram the Cruiser, which was a toy drive involving our school resource officer, Keith Baker, and students, and all the proceeds were donated to the United Way of Central Connecticut to be dispersed to families in need. December 15th, the Rocky Hill Parks and Rec held their second annual Underwater Pictures with Santa at the Rocky Hill High School pool. So Sergeant Morgan, who's on our dive rescue team, graciously played the role of Santa and stayed underwater for all the pictures. Let's see, December 17th, members of the RHPD participated in the Wreaths Across America, which lays wreaths at the veterans cemeteries across the country, and they were here in town for the Veterans Cemetery on West Street. And on December 22nd, RHPD with Fire participated in our first ever coin drop that I mentioned last meeting to benefit the Special Olympics. And I may have told you that they were looking for the extra proceeds to get them into the top 10, and with the donations they received that day, they went from number 11 to number 5 in the state of Connecticut. Number 5 top
Congrats.
PD in the state for the Special Olympics. So it really worked out well. I have a feeling you're going to see them out there again next year for that. So thanks to all who participated in that. Some other miscellaneous things. I do not have a Greater Hartford Regional Auto Theft Task Force report for you this month. I'll have it next month. They're compiling it now, kind of a year-end summary for 2022. So I'll report that to you next meeting. I also mentioned last meeting that our contractor, Recor, was set to begin installing the LPRs, pole-mounted LPRs in town on January 4th. They have started. As a matter of fact, I'm told they're roughly about two-thirds through the process. So I thought it was going to be spring or summer. It's going to be a lot sooner than that. So that's going smoothly, and I'll give you an update for next report. I do want to comment, one thing about these pole-mounted LPRs. We did get a call from a concerned citizen that, that they felt that, these cameras were going to be watching them, and they were a little uneasy about that. These are not real-time video cameras. These are just cameras that capture data, and they capture license plates. They do take intermittent still photos, but it's not running continuously, and it's not being fed back to headquarters and we're viewing it. It's just data. And to be honest with you, we're not even accessing it unless there's a request or a need for a criminal investigation or criminal incidents. So I just wanted to put that out there to kind of put people at ease. That's what they're used for. And they're going to be tremendously helpful once we get them on board, especially in assisting in investigations. We'd like to mention trends at this committee, and we just picked up on a new trend that's happened in the past few days, so I'll make mention of it. Within the last 2 or 3 days, we've seen 7 attempts in town on stealing motor vehicles. Ironically, all the motor vehicles were Hyundais and Kias. We did a little research, and we found out that sometime in December, there was a TikTok social media challenge that came out of Minneapolis, and apparently it's now reached Rocky Hill, where there was videos of you showing how you can break into a Kia or a Hyundai on any model between 2010 and 2021. Those cars did not have push-button starts. They had the old key and ignition. If you damage the steering column and with a screwdriver and USB port, you may be able to get the car going. And then, of course, you have to videotape yourself joyriding afterwards. So unfortunately, they kind of purported it as being easy to do. Of the 7 attempts, there was only 1 that was successful. But this is a trend we have not seen, so it appears to be social media at work once again. And here we are. So, I'll keep you updated on that. Hopefully this isn't a long-term thing. And I believe that's all I have.
Great.
Police report.
Counselor O'Sullivan.
I'm sorry, that TikTok thing is just so depressing. I mean, just larger forces that seem to be beyond all of us. It's just, I don't know, almost speechless.
For good and bad.
So just one thing, Chief, just looking at the month-over-month data for this past year, so the burglary numbers, were up compared to last year. It was like we had a spike in the summer, but then it calmed down the last quarter, 1 per month. Can you just talk a little bit about that trend, the up and the down? We don't have a breakdown here between residential and commercial. I don't know if that's part of the narrative, but if you just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the increase is in commercial properties. Why June, July, and August? I don't know. Perhaps weather-related, I don't know. More active outside for longer lengths during the day, we're not quite sure. And again, it could be 1 or 2 people generating, this spike. But other than that, what we saw in that category was pretty stable from prior years. So a blip on the screen, so to speak.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing else.
Counselor Prakash.
Yeah, Chief, so, congratulations on a great year. Like you said, there is a lot of good stuff going on in the department last year, and, a lot of that is kind of reflected in the numbers as well, numbers going down. Like you said, I think one of the most appreciated aspect of what you do is that citizen interaction where all of our first responders have that, right? And I think coming out of those interactions, thousands of interactions for all of you, including ambulance and fire. I think you guys do a great job of having our citizens covered, but also having a great, experience. Like actually, I don't want to call it customer experience, but it's similar to that, right? I mean, you're providing services, so that's great. One thing I was gonna, if with permission from the chair, like I wanted to just ask you if there is a possibility of actually doing a presentation. I know you talked about the LPRs a little bit, and I also received an email or two, I should say, about that after our discussion in the last meeting. If it's possible to do a presentation, a short presentation, like a 5-minute comprehensive view of like what the program is, where these installations are going to be, just like the basics, to educate the public out there, because I have a feeling that, Mr. Chairman, we'll keep getting these inquiries, right, as the program is rolled out. So I just want to make sure, like, we address that comprehensively one way. It doesn't have to be a half-an-hour presentation, a short, like, a couple of slides maybe, just to get it out there so that we can then, the viewers out there or just concerned citizens in general who are emailing me or you or in general, we can point them to something as a comprehensive place to find that information. And I think this is a good forum to do that, hopefully. I mean, as long as it's not too burdensome on you.
So you'd be looking for a presentation from in-house versus the contractor?
Yeah, just
basically
it's
how
more
we're
of
going to
like
use
an
it.
FYI, like, this is
Yeah.
what the program is. This is the length and the breadth of the program.
No problem.
This is the data we are collecting. Kind of similar to what you just told us today.
Sure.
But in a more comprehensive fashion so that people can, take a look at it and say, hey, I think I know about this program at this point. Like, because I think there are things out there in people's minds which are unanswered. So I actually sent last, 3 weeks ago, or after our meeting, 2 weeks ago, our meeting minutes from the finance committee and the town council, because we had actually, you wouldn't believe this, the minutes for that meeting were 15 pages long, just on that topic. And actually I sent one of the residents that, and this is discussed in depth, but I think that was a year ago. So I think there is still some gaps. People might not have been paying attention at that point. So I hope it's not too much to ask.
No.
Yeah.
Would you like it next month with the
Yeah, that,
drone presentation?
sure, that makes sense. Why not? Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm thinking Councilor O'Sullivan was very careful to kind of want to know how deep into the car the camera might look and all those kinds of things, and privacy. And
We can go
I mean,
over
just
it.
showing a couple examples of the way the data is going to come to you, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be somebody sitting there drinking a cup of coffee and you're going to be peering into their back window
They're
or
not that-
something.
they're not that good.
I mean, not that kind of angle.
Hey, Bob's coming home at 3 a.m. Wonder where he was.
Yeah, I think
Oh, it's Bud Light tonight.
I think when people hear LPRs, people think it's Minority Report, if you've seen that Tom Cruise movie. I think that's what people are imagining, maybe. But I just want to make sure that people understand it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not that.
That's a good idea. We'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Great suggestion. Great. Thanks. Thank you. My question. Oh, so we look forward to the Hartford Task Force report because I always think that they're really good, and I kind of think that along with us having the extra bodies in town, our investment in that task force is what's helping us drive some of these other numbers or keep them flat. The car thefts and the catalytic converter thefts.
Just a quick response to that. So they sent me an email with, that it was coming with a teaser that it has reduced car thefts in the greater Hartford region since the inception by 27%.
Yeah.
So it's working.
Yeah, it's focused on the perpetrators and the small percentage, and you get them off the street, and everything else will take care of itself. So
Yes.
it seems to be saying that. So that's great. So, and then I was waiting for the year-to-date total calls for service because, I mean, at one point during the year, approaching mid-year, I think we were, well on our way, we were 50% ahead of schedule.
Yeah, it looked scary.
Yeah, it looked like, holy cow, you're going to double the calls. But, so 43,000 and change is not bad, I guess. But it has, it's just been going up every year.
Really, yeah.
And, we're appreciative of dispatch and patrol and the department handling that increase. And I think at one point you said it's not so much the growing population in town, but it's the influx during the day of our business community. We get a large influx during our workday of
A lot of
cars
vehicles.
and bodies in town.
A lot of vehicles pass through this town in a 24-hour period. And you're coming in on 91 alone in the morning rush hour. You just see everyone
Yeah.
getting off the ramps.
Yep.
So, yeah, that contributes to it, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So I'd be curious if the dispatch count, is reflects that type of thing, during the day, lighter at night, all that kind of stuff, lighter on the weekend, I don't know, but thank you for that report. I think we're all set there. Thank you, Chief. Before jumping over to emergency management, is Charlie Brown still available for health department report? Thank you, Charlie. Awesome. Thanks for hanging in there.
Hey, no problem. So as of this afternoon, let me bring up the data.
Do we have a
Rocky
volume?
Hill
Do we have a
had,
volume control for you that might get us a little louder?
I can talk louder, but I don't know if that'll help. That,
That's fine,
Is it-
Charlie.
is that
I
better?
think- I think it's an issue here in our,
okay.
in the. room.
So cumulatively, as far as this afternoon, we've had 5,156 confirmed cases of COVID over the course of the pandemic in Rocky Hill.
5,466?
5,156.
50.
So Uno.
156.
Yeah, 156. Cumulative deaths from COVID stand at 157, so 157. And that's up a couple cases or a couple fatalities within the last week. We are seeing, generally the trends of COVID, hospitalizations and urgent care visits have been going up in our district here over the past several weeks. So we are seeing more people seeking care for COVID. Trying to be able to quantify the numbers of COVID is very difficult at this particular point because the number of at-home tests that really are out there and being utilized. The majority of people that we see, that test positive with the at-home tests, those are not reported to the state, and we don't get those numbers. So when you see positivity rates, for the town, like what we had seen at the end of last week at 14.6%, know that number is probably low. So because it doesn't include all of those at-home tests. Aside from that, we've been very lucky in the past few weeks to see the numbers for influenza and RSV start to decline within the district. I do want to clarify something that Kim had pointed out earlier about the quadrivalent vaccine. It does cover influenza A. It actually covers two viruses of influenza A and two viruses from influenza B. The issue is whether or not what's circulating is actually matching up with those two viruses. And I think that's maybe some of the issue that we had at the beginning of the holiday season in November. We saw a huge spike in influenza. Luckily, that spike, as we went into Christmas and New Year's, had actually really moderated. So as we were seeing COVID numbers start to increase, the influenza and RSV hospitalizations have decreased. So we really have dodged a bullet with respect to this because it hasn't affected the hospitals as much as what we were afraid that it could. So I have to say good job for everyone for doing the right things, getting vaccinated, making sure that they're washing their hands and staying home when they're sick. Other than that, I mean, we still continue to monitor, the cases for COVID and RSV, and our epidemiologist, Christine Gasick, is producing, weekly reports that we share with all of our towns. And I stand ready to answer any questions.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Charlie. We didn't really see a significant post-holiday COVID spike. It seems to have been much more moderate than some people were predicting. Do you have any insight into that?
Well, I mean, the issue that we're looking at is whether or not we actually saw more COVID or not. It's very hard to quantify, as I said. Anecdotally, we're hearing about, people that tested positive and then just did the right thing. So the messages that we've gotten out through the pandemic about what to do after you test positive, I think are being taken to heart. And I think that that's, a good thing with respect to limiting spread as well. But, the numbers overall, I think there was a lot of information about, and people were very concerned also about the spike in influenza in November. And I think people took the appropriate precautions. It does show, I think, to me, that with taking those precautions, we can have an impact upon the spread of respiratory disease within our communities.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Prakash.
I just wanted to thank you for all the data you provided today, like with this handout, and I think it's very informational. I think we just, like you said, I think we just need to be vigilant at this point. Like as far as COVID is concerned, I think it's gotten to a point, I think, where I think people are making those decisions, probably individually. Masking or otherwise, and taking precautions and things like that, because I think the people are at this point are pretty well educated, hopefully, about what they need. Am I on the right track on that?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. I think that, the more education that we can give on what the current status of disease within the community really gives people the opportunity to take advantage of their education of what they've learned about not spreading disease. So, for example, here in the last week, we've got most of the state of Connecticut in the high transmission category from CDC. So we're seeing a lot of transmission with COVID. So people, that gets on the news and people say, okay, well, I understand what I need to do. I need to limit my exposure. I need to wear a mask where it's appropriate. And I think that we're seeing people do that. Once again, complacency is our biggest enemy with respect to respiratory disease. And I think that we saw that, very much when we see the rise in influenza that was really controlled when there were mandates in place for social distancing. There were mandates in place for masking and things of that nature. So, when we had those mandates in place, influenza disappeared for about a year and a half. So as we start to kind of step away from those things, we can see the impact on the spread of disease. So this really should be a very good teachable moment for everyone, in the fact that if we do the basic precautions of washing your hands, covering your cough, staying home if you're sick, getting vaccinated, and making sure that you're wearing a mask as part of your toolkit, then where it's appropriate, then we really can impact the spread of disease within the communities.
Yeah, one last thing, by the way, I read this on somewhere on social media. I don't know what the source was, but about the ticks being out there for the all year round now, it's supposed to be a problem. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends upon the weather as far as that's concerned. In the wintertime, ticks have a tendency to hibernate, and we're not in areas where ticks really are, frequenting. So you spend a winter and you're not spending a lot of time in the leaves and overgrowth where ticks, like to hang out. But in winters like what we see right now, where people may be more active in the outdoors, and the ticks, as it's warmer, they are active as well, seeking that, that blood meal that allows them to actually, survive. They're, so you see more encounters along those lines. This is something that, in the long run, we really need to monitor as an effect of climate change. As winters are warmer and the warm periods are extended, the possibility for vector-borne diseases from insects like ticks, mosquitoes, really does increase. So we have to be cognizant of that as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Charlie.
Charlie, I think I'm good. The 5,156 cases is the cumulative over the last
It's the total
several
through the
years.
pandemic.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
what's
total
our
through the pandemic.
additional in the last 4 months?
I could get that for you, but I'd have to calculate it. I don't have it on hand right now.
I mean, we know that we've added to the 157. We know we added 2 new fatalities to that total over the long haul. But what did we add to the total cases? And we do know
So
it's
let me-
underreported.
So let me pull back a little bit and see one thing. So I'll go back to, say, the beginning of November. Okay. So at the beginning of November, Rocky Hill had 4,870 cases, confirmed. So from the beginning of November until today, where we have 5,156.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. And a mental health checkup. I mean, depression and all that, and the seasonal depression. I mean, any comments there?
Well, not having a lot of snow is helpful for me. I'll say that much. So the ability to get out and be active is actually a benefit towards some of the mental health aspects that we see. I do think that we do need to pay attention to the numbers related to things like substance abuse along those lines, because they do get seasonally affected. But we are still monitoring the overdose cases. We still have an active recovery coach that's available to support people that are affected by substance abuse and overdoses.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for your report. We appreciate you hanging in there and waiting. Thank you.
No problem. I'm here for you guys.
All right, man.
Charlie.
And finally, but not least of all, emergency management.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a COVID update within the town. Due to the fact that we're at a high transmission, we've changed the sign on the building to reflect that it's strongly recommended that we wear face masks as opposed to just recommended. Today, emergency management distributed masks and thermometers to the department heads in the event that they felt that they needed them. And we do have a supply of masks on hand as needed. Moving into department updates, applications for certs is online now. It was taken care of last week. We'll be doing some social media exposure with that and sending that out so that we can get some candidates in for that. We've updated again the emergency management website with winter storm preparedness flyers and handouts. Under EMD projects, like I said, the CERT team is kind of a big focus right now, so we hope to get a bunch of applications in, do some interviewing, and start the process in March. We're on the state team. We will be recognized by the state as we've entered that process. We're going to be holding our next quarterly workshop for the EOC, which will now be at the Rocky Hill Fire Company number 3 in the first week of February, and that will just be a focus on resource management and available assets to the specific ESFs or the org chart. Currently attending the FEMA Advanced EMI course in Fairfield University. We did finish the basic course successfully back in December. So we've moved into the advanced course. That course is a 5-week course, broken up over the course of the year. So I go once every other month, basically, to a class. And in the process of the FAA drone pilot class, still working on that. One thing that is not mentioned on your under your department updates or projects is the numbering of town hall. That project is almost complete. We've decided that we're going to do 4-inch lettering. Excuse me. It will be a letter followed by a number to identify all the exits, and that was at the request of an employee's request as well as part of the town request. As far as activities for last month, there are no sign-offs on any plans. Generally, that happens in the springtime once they bring their plans in. There was one emergency activation, the structure fire on 12/25. There were 3 weather-related notifications that went out. The strong storm advisories, heavy rain, flooding, and we did have one that showed concern for the river with potential for ice flows, and that was on the holiday weekend. We also emergency management participated in the West Side and Walmart with fire department and PD for the stuffer truck. And that's my report. Any questions?
Thank you. Counselor O'Sullivan.
No questions here. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Counselor Prakash.
Yeah, Steve, a
Yeah.
quick question on, there is a school safety committee, right, on the board side, right? Do you have kind of interactions with them? Are you in touch with them on a regular basis?
Not as much as we want to be, and I'm going to be working on that. I've been working with Ron in facilities, who's working on that committee, and we just started some dialogue about a project. We have the Safe Kids Project, which is sponsored by FEMA, and it's a ready-go bag kit. You'll see that in next month's report, actually. I'm planning on trying to get that into the school system. The biggest problem with that is due to the scheduling, how to be able to get in and get that established. So I am going to be working on that program.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up was there were some discussions late last year, I think, on that committee, and I, as a school liaison, I interact with some of the board members. So they were, they had discussed about like alarm systems and things like that on the school property, obviously. And so I was just wondering, like, how does that
and
kind of align with, like, as a like one approach kind of, right,
Yep.
for town and the school?
And if you have the opportunity, and I'd be more than happy to come in and speak with them, it's a matter of getting into that. But feel free to, use me as a resource if you're on those committees. I'd be more than happy to come down.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was more of a curiosity on my part to like kind of see like how we actually like align with them,
Yeah.
or do we? Like, I mean, do we need to do better, or?
I'd like to do, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to do some safety and security in the schools. And I know they have their programs, but again, be able to provide a resource to them as needed.
Yeah, because you are like on top of this pyramid, and if you will, right? Like in terms of like just integrating everything.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. And I would, I would like to get in there if that opportunity arises.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. I think that's about it. No old business or new business. I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.